So after multiple playthroughs, I have come to the conclusion that Alone in the Dark is probably going to go down as one of the most divisive games of 2024, and I think for good reason. So before we begin the video, this is going to contain spoilers, so here's your warning. Alone in the Dark is a title that performance-wise is just all over the place. I played this on a 4070, and I don't think I've played a game that struggles to maintain its frame rate when transitioning to different rooms as much as Alone in the Dark does. It was surprisingly frequent and disappointing to see the game struggle this much in areas in which there was no combat. Speaking of combat, it's really uninspired, and while there are some novel ideas like the opportunity system, which is essentially grabbing items in the environment and converting them into throwables, it's just okay as a whole, but it really can be hilarious when engaging in melee combat. And hear me out, because sometimes you're just fighting an enemy and you'll swing on them and your weapon just disappears. It's really my favorite bug. I'm just attacking an enemy and somehow my shovel or whatever I'm using just disappears from my hand. You don't do any damage either, but it looks really funny when it happens. There is an option for stealth, but I don't want to talk about it because it's a rarely used mechanic, and honestly, it felt useless during my multiple playthroughs. Overall, there's just so much jank in this game, and I completely understand the critical reception. I can see someone immediately dismissing this game in its opening hours due to the various performance issues. It really can be an unoptimized mess at times, but here's the thing. I can also see people really enjoying this game. Let me explain. This is a Lovecraftian mystery set in a manner for the mentally fatigued, and it feels like the perfect setting for this genre. It's a playable B-movie that emphasizes exploration and really commits to the mystery surrounding the manor. There are so many different twists and turns, and the game does go to a number of unexpected places. I truly believe that if the developers were not committed to the ideas and concepts that make up Alone in the Dark, I don't think this game would work. It could have easily devolved into a generic survival horror title around mid-game, but it doesn't. And when I say this game is crazy, I mean it. There are so many moments where my jaw dropped because one moment I was in the swamps of the bayou and the next I was in a frozen tundra trying to navigate with flares. The dimension hopping that takes place in this game is incredibly entertaining, and when you get to those moments in which the transitions are seamless, it really helps elevate this game. It also helps that each character you interact with is practically indifferent to your activities. The orderlies and manor staff obviously care, but everyone else treats you like a patient. And as you progress through the campaign, you really start to question whether or not the things that are happening are in the character's head. I think this is a testament to the setting and also the performances by the main characters Emily and Edward, played by Jodie Comer and David Harbour. Both of these individuals provide believable performances, and I think their interactions with one another are generally entertaining. Some of the dialogue is hit or miss, but it is kind of funny to see them dismiss the individual who happens to be affected by the madness surrounding the manor. There's one scene in particular in which you have to enter a closet to transfer to another dimension, and regardless of who you're playing as, the other character just acts like it's whatever, because they believe they'll have to be the ones solving the mystery. They just kind of find you unreliable. Like I said, it's very B-movie, and I'm glad that it has moments of humor. So to truly understand what's happening at the manor, you're going to have to play as both characters. You're going to have multiple playthroughs. While there are shared experiences, because a lot of the levels are the same, the interactions and dialogue will greatly differ at times. Jeremy is Emily's uncle, and she does know some of the staff at Deserto, so her journey is going to be far more personal than Edward. The staff seem to be generally concerned about her, especially in some of the conversations with like Batiste. And what's interesting is that when you switch to Edward, it just seems like he's more of a nuisance to all these people because he's a private investigator. It's not that he doesn't have a personal connection either in the story, but for the most part, every character tends to keep him at arm's length, and it's really funny when they talk to him as well. They're pretty hostile. So if you only play as one character, you're going to be probably confused at the end. I know I was. I felt like there were pieces of information missing And I had a feeling that because I played as Edward first, that I should switch to Emily. And I think that that would just fill in the blanks. She experiences certain events differently, and the staff reveal things to her that are just important to the overall narrative, which I thought was really interesting. But regardless of who you select at the beginning, each of these characters will have a level that is specific toward them, and these are fantastic. Edward, for example, has to deal with a past case that connects them with an individual at Deserto, and Emily has to deal with the truth regarding the loss of her husband. Like I said, these are real highlights of Alone in the Dark, and they do an excellent job of showing the connection between these characters and the manor. It's all very well done, and some of the subject matter that's featured can be fairly hard-hitting. I was really impressed that there was this much effort and care taken regarding the contrasting perspectives, because they could have gotten really lazy and just made everything all the same, just different characters. I just like the fact that there was lore specific to each character that helped shed light on them and the mystery surrounding the manor. The game just does a really good job of propelling you forward as long as you're hooked at the beginning. Now, as I've stated before, I understand why people would immediately dismiss this game, but I believe that if the game didn't feature so many prominent issues when it came to performance, that people could overlook the flaws in combat. I don't think the narrative is perfect by any means, but what's here is very entertaining. I do feel, however, like there was a wasted opportunity when it came to the contrasting perspectives. When you have these moments where Emily or Edward are waking up from their respective journeys, they usually run into the other character. And when they start to talk to one another, the unaffected character will always mention what they've been up to as it relates to exploration. They discuss the importance of their efforts, and sometimes, especially in Emily's case, she'll mention that she has no experience in this, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, what happened with them? Because in these moments, I think it would have been the perfect time to shift perspectives and allow us to control the other character. It would have been kind of cool to switch to Edward or Emily and then have them interrogate the staff and the inhabitants of the manor while the other character is off on their mind-bending journey. I really wanted to see what the other character has learned and then have them slowly come to the conclusion that the other person isn't crazy because there is something insidious in play here. But then again, I'm also completely fine with the multiple playthroughs because the game's pace is brisk. Your first playthrough may take anywhere between 5 to 8 hours to complete, and the second can be completed in under 3 because you're going to have an understanding of all the puzzles. My first playthrough with Edward was on medium, and it felt like a slog at times when I got to the combat sections. So when I got to Emily, I turned the difficulty down because I just wanted to be faster, and I was zooming. It also made combat more enjoyable because of how quickly I was eliminating enemies. And yeah, the game is a survival horror title, so, resource management, but you don't have to worry about it as much on lower difficulties because you're just more prepared to take down groups of enemies. Alone in the Dark is a game full of jank, but it does have a lot of charm. I honestly came away surprised and impressed, but I should mention that I bought this game on sale. I cannot recommend this title at full price, not with all the issues it has and its overall length. But if you happen to find this title on sale for around $40, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what's here. I'm hoping that the developers commit to cleaning up the performance issues, because then I think this game is going to be worth picking up. Now, I will admit that it's a bit light on horror, which is weird, right? I really feel like this game should have been marketed as a Lovecraftian mystery like The Sinking City, because I think that's probably its best comparison. There are moments of horror, but they don't really show up until the end of the game. So this is where we're going to get into heavy spoilers. I'm going to put a timestamp here, so if you want to skip this entire section, feel free. But I do want to talk about the ending a bit because it kind of came out of nowhere, and I am going to show you the scene that really took me by surprise. Because here's the thing. There is so much misdirection in this game that when you get to this part, it can be very jarring. Because for the majority of this game, it's more of a mystery, and it's got some horror elements, and I don't think there's anything here that will shock you. I really don't. That is until I got to this. This was the biggest what the fuck moment in the game, and while I expected something crazy to happen, I didn't expect this.
Stop! Are you crazy? This here's what needs to happen, Carlton. Grace, stop!
Detective, get my uncle out of here.
Jeremy, come with me. Get over here. Jeremy, come with me. Jeremy, come here.
No! There has to be another one! Jeremy! Come on.
When I first got to the end of the game, I actually anticipated another standoff with the Dark Man. And I understand that that doesn't really make sense if you played the game and you got to chapter 4 and it kind of concludes that saga. But because it's a Lovecraftian title, because it's a survival horror game, I expected that evil to remain. I expected to kind of fight other enemies, mostly those individuals who were at the manor who just became possessed, or was going to fight the other character because they just happen to be missing. That's primarily because the game focuses on the Dark Man. It really distracts you with this. And the Dark Man is this supernatural presence that enters into a one-sided contract with Jeremy, and your entire journey is trying to have them get away from that. But you're not paying attention to the other dealings at the house. They are mentioned constantly, but I don't think because of what's happening in front of you, you have much time to worry about what's happening near the end. So, when we got to the end, at no point in time was I anticipating this eldritch horror. At no point in time was I expecting this level of violence. That entire sequence to me was insane. I had to put my controller down for a second and appreciate what the developers just did, because they really took these distractions and kind of forced you to remember that all of these people are crazy and they are affected by what's happening in the manor. And that the evil that resides at the manor is very much real. And it is terrifying. And I thought that was awesome. Because when I finally recovered and I picked my controller back up, I was like, did we skip a few chapters? Did we jump into an entirely different game? And once I defeated the boss and I got to the ending, I said to myself, I want to replay this game. And I want to do it with the other character because during the finale, they mention their findings and they conclude that the manor housed a cult. So while you were out going on this mind-bending journey, they were actually on the ground figuring out why everyone was just practically insane and why all these people went missing. When you commit to a second replay, you're going to find all these different collectibles and have interactions that hint at this as well. There's going to be more clarity there. Things happen to make more sense the second time around. Now, do I think they stuck the ending? Not really. I really feel like, once again, if you could control the other character while the main character is recovering, I think it would have been more insightful. And I also think it would have cleaned up a number of different plot holes that were created because there's like this big absence there. But then again, that's just my opinion. Like I've stated before, what's here is thoroughly entertaining. And if the developers weren't committed to these concepts and ideas, Alone in the Dark probably would have flamed out around the end of chapter 3. But what is here is really good B-movie material. I would love to see this made into a movie or into a limited series. Now, in the end, do I believe Alone in the Dark is worth playing? Yes. but there are headaches, and you need to have some level of tolerance for those issues. But I think if you push past the jank, you're going to find a gem. And I think this game does a really good job of embracing the insanity of its narrative. And I think the developers should be given their kudos because they had so many different opportunities to really kind of play it safe, but they didn't. You could have gotten really a standard survival horror title, but instead we got something that was more like a Lovecraftian mystery. And I think that when you finally get to those types of games, it can always take you by surprise because cosmic horrors are always so convoluted. There's always all these different things happening. There's all these different distractions. And that happens here in Alone in the Dark. Do I really wish they would have embraced horror more? Yes. But honestly, what's here is fine. And I think that it will get better over time. And here's the thing. I'm hoping that the developers really do fix the performance issues. And I'm hoping that the game starts to retail around 40 and you start to see sales for it, because by the time this game is fixed, when people get their hands on it, I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised by what's here. This is a game that is the very definition of a rough gem. You're not going to probably like the combat. You're probably going to say to yourself, this is just okay. But at this price point, you're probably playing for other reasons. You're playing for the exploration, the puzzles, character interaction, the dialogue, all of this stuff, the different performances. And I think in that regard, you're not going to be disappointed by what you find. I think that once the performance issues get fixed, I think that this game is going to be looked at very differently. I think this game is going to be a gem. And I think that a lot of people are probably going to say to themselves that this should have worked, but unfortunately, it was released in an unoptimized state. And all of the critical reviews about this game were really right. It's just really difficult to overlook the issues that this game had at launch. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment below about your time with Alone in the Dark, because that is going to do it for this video. If you like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.